Hey everyone, it's Tom Karadza with another Rockstar Real Estate Minute, and today we wanted to talk about what a possible real estate crisis or crash looks like. Not because we're saying one is coming, but we think we should be prepared for anything. So in order for us to prepare for the possibility of one coming, we like to look at historical data to see what it can teach us about the past. So the only big crash that's ever happened in Toronto has been around the 1989, 1990 era that we can find. So we want to share our computer. We've never really jumped on my desktop like this before, but I want to share my screen and look at some stats together so we can break this out a little bit. So now let's kind of just transfer over to my screen and we'll take a look at some of these stats together. Okay, so if we go over to Google and we type in TREB Market Watch, we'll find the TREB site that has the latest Toronto Real Estate Market Board stats and the historical stats. So if we click on the Market Watch link here in Google, it'll bring you directly to the latest page with the latest stats. And at the bottom of this page, we can get a full report and you can get the historical annual sales numbers, which are really interesting. So first, I just want to pop over to this full report so that we can take a look at something together really quickly here. So if you look at the latest numbers in Toronto, you can see the average price for a detached home in Toronto is just about $1.3 million. In the 905 area, it's just approaching $1 million, 999,000. So there's kind of the latest numbers. And I guess more interestingly than that is that the annual year-over-year percentage price increases in Toronto for detached in the 416 area is 26% and 27% in the 905 area. So, this is why we're talking about this stuff. You can't keep going at these rates indefinitely. So we want to take a look at some of the stats. And the historical stats kind of give us some insight. And although everyone talks about all the headlines discuss the latest stats, we find that we learn the most from going back into the historical stats. And here's some of the historical stats that TREB offers. TREB probably does one of the best jobs of any of the real estate boards we've found, sharing some of their historical numbers. So they have a kind of a chart here at the bottom that's kind of interesting. But I like to focus in on this top area here. And if you look at this area here, 1990 is essentially the only time the Toronto market has had a real collapse, the 89-90 era here. And if we look at sales, so we can see the year here, we can see sales here, and we can see the average sales price. So if we look at 1988, you can see the average sales price got up to 229. The year before it was 189. Then it hit 273. And then in 1990 it hit 255. So it was going up, and then it hit the peak and it started to come down, and you can see that's reflected in the sales volume. So the amount of sales activity that was going on in the Toronto real estate market went from 38,000 units right down to 26,000. So that's kind of like when everything froze. And it's interesting, even my own choice of words there, you can see that we talk about like the real estate market freezing up, but there were still 26,000 trades going on from a high, it looks like, of a few years earlier, 52,000 in 1986, 49,000 in 88, then it came right down to 26. So activity, there is still activity, it's just much different. And the price goes down from 255. So here's what's interesting. It actually takes, price goes from 255, 234, 214, 206, and then it actually stabilizes a little bit in 1994. You can see it goes up a little bit to 208, in 1995, 203, and then in 1996 it comes down to 198. So really that's the true bottom, and then it starts going back up there. So from 1990 to 1996, it took about 6 years to hit the bottom. So that's kind of the biggest real estate crash that Toronto's ever seen. It took about 6 years for prices to start going down to actually hit the bottom and to begin working themselves up. So that's interesting to us as real estate investors. And the sales volume hit the bottom pretty quick. Sales volume, the activity in the real estate market went from 38,000 to 26,000. So that number back in 1990, the sales number is really interesting because it started going up the next year. So sales activity in the entire market went down to 26,000, and then it jumped right back up to 38 the next year, 41 the next year, 2 years later 44, then it hit 55 2 years after that. So it recovered, the sales activity recovered much faster than the prices. This is interesting to us as investors because it tells me if I ever need to unload my property, even in bad bad times, there's still transactions going on. So I like to know that even though prices took about 6 years to hit bottom, during that time there was still activity. And if I'm buying smart, if I'm buying good starter homes, which we believe are the most liquid pieces of real estate, even during down periods in the economy, I like to have options, and that tells me there's still transactions going on. So hopefully that gives you some insight into what a past real estate crisis looks like, and gets you thinking about what the future may look like should another one come our way. Hopefully you find that useful. Until next time, your life, your terms.
Well, good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You pressed me?
Yeah, of course.